when life can become incredibly difficult, overwhelming, and we might feel stuck in a trench. The darkness can be isolated, making us feel lonely and hopeless. But Jesus meets us there in our darkest moments. Today, on Divine Mercy Sunday, we hear in our gospel text the witness of the disciples who were grappling with fear, grief, and doubt after the crucifixion of their beloved Jesus and Master. I think they must have gathered back in the upper room where the Last Supper had taken place, but they met in an atmosphere of fear. Those who had orchestrated Jesus' death were relentless in their animosity, and the disciples felt the weight of this hostility. Their own destiny seemed intertwined with that of Jesus, and fear gripped their hearts. As they struggled with this internal and external terror, Jesus came into their midst, and suddenly terror gave way to hope and joy. And he says to them, "Peace be with you." Then he shows them his hands and his feet. But why hands and feet? We typically tend to identify people by looking at their faces, not at their hands and their feet. What was unique about the hands and the feet of Jesus? These hands and feet carried the marks of love. His wounds are not just physical but spiritual. They carry our burdens and our sins. His woundedness, his brokenness, they are the identification marks that he's carried. The hands that he used to do good to others, to heal the sick, to raise the dead, and to embrace children were on display. And he tells his disciples, "Look at this, it is I." The disciples, remember, had abandoned him. Some even denied Jesus, like Peter. But when Jesus appeared, he doesn't rebuke them. Instead, he gives them his peace. When we present ourselves to the Lord, as we are doing this Sunday, with our weaknesses, we receive no rebuke. The greeting Jesus always gives to us is, "I give you peace. Peace be with you." The Gospel mentions that when Jesus appears to his disciples, Thomas was not among the group. Remember, Thomas was a man of great courage who had said, "Let us go to Bethany with Jesus so that we could die alongside with him," in John 11:6. But this time, after the death of Jesus, he was broken. Thomas was shattered and was struggling in the trench of doubt and fear. It is in his brokenness and his helplessness that Jesus comes in, and he invites Thomas. He says to him, "Come, touch the wounds in my hands and in my side and see." And Thomas had a great response. He cried, "My Lord and my God." Like Thomas, we all struggle in the trenches and sometimes with doubt. Yet, God's patience remains constant. He walks beside us, explaining the scriptures, sharing meals, and waiting for our return. When we hit rock bottom, we can still feel his presence. And the trenches are trying to make ends meet, working multiple jobs, trying to get by. Jesus reminds us that he is our provider. And the trenches of dealing with anxiety and panic attacks, feeling like you are losing control, Jesus shows us his wounds and he says, "I understand your fear and I am your peace." In the trenches of trying to navigate a toxic work relationship or a toxic environment and feeling like you're working on eggshells every day, Jesus says, "I love you and I give you the strength. I love you and I am here for you." In the trenches of dealing with the loss of a loved one, feeling like grief is suffocating you, Jesus wraps his arms around you and he carries you. and the trenches are struggling with identity and a sense of self-worth and feeling like you are not enough, Jesus shows you his wounds. He says, you are enough because he has redeemed you. In the trenches of trying to overcome an addiction, feeling like you are trapped in the cycle of shame and of guilt, Jesus says, I love you and I have broken those chains. You are free. And the trenches of dealing with chronic pain and illness and feeling like your body is failing you, Jesus' wounds reminds us that he knows what it is like to suffer and he is always with us. Jesus' wounds and mercy speaks to each of our struggles. He is our provider. He is our peace. He is our strength. And he is our healer. How can we respond to Jesus when we are in the trenches? We can invite Jesus into our trenches, just as the disciples did after his crucifixion. We can fix our gaze on the wounds of Jesus, the wounds of love, the wounds of mercy. Those wounds carry our burdens and our sin, and through them, the Lord pours out his mercy and forgiveness. We can embrace our weaknesses and our vulnerabilities. Look at Thomas. When the Lord appeared a second time, he acknowledged that he had doubted. We can share our story and our struggles with others so that we can find connection and support. The disciples, they found support in one another, and Jesus was there to support them. And finally, my friends, let us all practice mercy and compassion, but first towards ourselves and then towards others. Jesus is the Lord of mercy, and he offers mercy to all of us. On this Divine Mercy Sunday, I pray for each one of us. I pray for you that you may experience God's mercy and know his compassion, his forgiveness, and his peace in your trench experience. God bless you.